Hello, guys. It's great to have you here today. And we are chatting with some special guests. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and they're going to tell you about just briefly about their game and also their first experience with VR. You want to go first, Chris?
Hi, I guess I'm at the top left corner. My name's Chris from Illusions, the team behind Space Pirate Trainer, one of the launch titles for HTC Vive, Oculus Touch, and that little Oculus Quest that has kept us beating the last couple of 12 months. So my role at Illusions is we're a small team, so we do all sorts of stuff, mostly QA and marketing and all that stuff. My first experience with VR probably stretches back to the 90s when I was first in an arcade, and it was that the Daryl what was that, Daryl Dynamic? Dinosaur Daryl. It was a very old clunky thing on my head, and I was a kid at a mall and I fell in love with it, but it took me years to come back. It wasn't until the Vive was sent to us and room scale became a thing that I actually thought, oh, this is a thing that I want to get involved in. Dirk made a prototype for Space Pirate Trainer in a couple of months, and I was hooked from that. So we have dropped everything and been doing VR ever since.
That's great. Thank you very much. And Tommy, could you do the same?
Sure. So my name is Tommy Palm. I'm one of the founders and the CEO of Resolution Games in Sweden, Stockholm. You can see throughout my window a rainy, soon to be very dark Sweden. So we have been releasing 11 games by now. Last week released Cookout, cooking game. My first adventure in VR was also in '92, and the same game as Chris was telling you about, like the arcade machine.
Virtualities?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy that we're finally here.
That's good. Thanks. And
VR, yeah.
Chris, your the name of that game's Dactyl Nightmare.
Dactyl Nightmare. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can't take credit for that. We're getting that info from backstage. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Matsukawa. I do strategy and business development at Secret Location, which is a Canadian VR studio. I'm part of the small team out of the LA office. And I was working in television at a production company that shared office space with Secret Location in LA. So my first VR experience was actually kind of like the early Blasters prototype before we put it on early access on Steam. And being a lifelong gamer, just doing a first-person shooter where that's the subject of this panel, where you get to dodge all the lasers and just bring it really physical, made me really think, this is, kind of what VR brings to the table and makes it so much different than GoldenEye, which was my, kind of original kind of favorite game on N64 and made me a Nintendo gamer for a very long time. So I played that, and then also HTC Vive, the lab, the bow and arrow section was like also one of my favorite kind of first VR experiences that really made me want to get into this field.
That's great. So you guys touched on this just a little bit as you're doing your intros, but as you were developing the games you have right now, did you go into that with the expectation that you were going to create an arcade game specifically, like something that would be arcade style, or did that just kind of evolve into that? And do you want to go ahead and take that question first, Michael?
Sure. Yeah. So Blasters, we put it out on early access on Vive and Rift. Well, I mean, actually just on Steam. Then we released it on Vive and Rift, and then later on PSVR. So it was really kind of intended for a home release first. When I play as a consumer, just playing, it's a very challenging game. So we had a really good time with it. But me and another team member in LA were kind of like, hey, this should really be in VR arcades around the world. So we kind of started the effort to start pitching directly to VR arcades and Springboard and Synthesis and kind of the different platforms out there. But so soon, unannounced yet, but we will have a kind of more LBE arcade specific version coming out in the near future. So what was just announced was the kind of free roam version of Blasters that we just made. That's launching on Synthesis. So that I think launched last week. But we're kind of just doing our first month rollout to see, which locations are open and want the game and want to do free roam VR. So that's our kind of new exciting announcement with Blasters specifically. It's called Blasters of the Universe Infinity Forever.
That's interesting. Thanks for mentioning that. I actually made a note to come back to that question later to talk about LBEs and stuff with the considering the situation going on now in the world with the COVID. So, Chris, would you answer that same question about did you intend to develop the game that way from the very beginning?
By arcade, do you imply like we can talk about arcades LBE next?
Yeah,
I guess.
actually,
But
he answered it that way, but you know what I meant. I was actually referring to
our
your style.
core gameplay, our mission objective for Space Pirate Trainer was to get a first-person shooter working in VR that didn't make us sick. So it was really important to focus on room scale. That was one of the reasons why we made the game. Room scale came into being in 2015 to our office with the Vive, the early Vive prototypes. And it was just such a fun experience walking around our small spaces that we just needed to make a game. And Dirk, the genius that he is, this is Dirk Van Welden, Quark Cannon on Twitter, came up with the prototype for Space Pirate Trainer over a couple of months. And it was just so addictive, we couldn't stop playing it. So we just released it in, I think on 2016, April 2016, and we haven't stopped working on it since. And so the core gameplay loop is very arcadey. It's very, very easy to pick up, very fun to play, fast, simple to explain. Here are two blasters, go shoot. And that's kind of the appeal of it to a lot of arcades, I guess. They're now using it as a simple tool to show this is your hands in space and just walk around the space and use your hands to blast those flying things. So yeah, it's been really important to have a pick up and play gameplay, but also exploring room scale. That's been a very important part of our mission objective since 2015.
Tommy, would you like to add anything into that?
Yes. So Resolution Games has always also been focusing a lot on trying to broaden the target audience for VR. We've been talking internally. We think it's for everybody. So we've been focusing a lot on making sure that it's not nauseous inducing. We don't use a lot of locomotion in our titles typically, and we spend a lot of time on user testing with people who isn't as blind to what they're playing as we are in the team, because that happens very quickly with games. I love when you can go into a game like Space Pirate Trainer and just grab things, and as soon as you learned how the controllers work and how to operate your hands, then you're basically good to go. So it's good to on a good panel.
Yeah, I was going to mention to you guys, whenever Chris, my first experience with Space Pirate Trainer was actually, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Splitverse, but they do a lot of the mixed reality videos and stuff for VR. And I had never played it, and I was at their studio, and we needed some footage of something, and they put me in that. And so, of course, you know, you have like Live and different things where you can have the mixed reality with some of these games, and it was fantastic. It was so easy to pick up, and I was like, I'd never played it before in my life, and I was just like, oh wow, you know, I just felt it was awesome. And so it's really nice. I was thinking about that and how do you make sure that you have games where you can make your players want to come back? You know, like you get them engaged and you can have a good game, but you provide, you know, I know some of you have leaderboards and stuff, but how do you, or what do you do to make games that are have longevity? You know, you don't just want to play it one or two times, but you actually want to keep playing that. So, Tommy, you want to go with that one first?
Sure. And I come from a background of mobile gaming before this. I spent at least 15 or 16 years in mobile gaming. And we had kind of the same evolution a little bit. Like first, everybody started to like find what mechanics worked well with controllers, and when that type of sandbox game was over and done with, then games like Angry Birds came along and made this really, really nice simple progression where you would very clearly see that, okay, I beat this level. I got 3 stars. Now I'm ready to take next one. And we started to measure retention. That was a significant thing in mobile games all of a sudden. That's what the focus was. Like if you didn't have 32% first day retention. You were dead in the water. Just leave that title and go on to the next thing. VR games is fortunately not there yet. It's not as competitive these days, so we can focus a lot more on like just the core gameplay, making sure it's a fantastic experience. And I do think that a lot of VR games still needs to get that kind of deeper treatment. So it's not just like, wow, it's super cool. You test out a new mechanic. That was fun. But now I tried it. Go on to the next thing. It was kind of gimmicky. And the best way to do that is just as a dev team, continue working with your title for quite some time. So you'll see in Cookout that we released last week, we have that clear progression goal where you kind of grind your way through and there's the next thing opening up and add something new to the gameplay.
I think it's funny listening to you talk there. The whole time I kept thinking, basically you're telling the other developers that they need to find ways to make these VR games more addictive. And so the players want to come back, which is a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing in this case, because you should want to, you should just like really look forward to playing that game. So that's a good point. I mean, like, you can't just have a good game. You need to have a good game that people want to come back and play again, because it's really not going to survive if you only have people that play it, once or twice. That's great. And
especially in VR, where like going into the headset is a little bit of like take some energy. Yeah. It's not as easy as just popping up your mobile phone, right? So right. Definitely.
Yeah, so you have to find even more reasons to make them actually want to put on the. So you're actually accomplishing two goals there. You're making them want to be in VR, and you're making them specifically want to go back to your game. So that's actually that's a really good point. So, Michael, what about you? Would you like to address that question?
Yeah, just commenting on what we were just saying. Part of all the games here on this panel, the physicality of it, I think, is one thing that kind of separates these games again from console, from mobile, from other kind of genres of gaming. So the fact that I could go be John Wick, move around in Space Pirate Trainer was a big reason why I would want to go jump into that game when I go to the office and play. So and why I want to show it to friends, and why friends want to be like filmed on their phones while they're playing VR. So yeah, kind of Super Hot and Space Pirate, I think, are two where people love just seeing what they look like as they're playing the game. So and for me, that and Beat Saber and Pistol Whip and all these other kind of great games, kind of give you a nice little workout. And for anyone who's been stuck at home, as long as all of us have, if you have a Quest and could just kind of jump into VR without turning on the PC, setting up the sensors, all that stuff, that's they've removed a lot of the friction. I think that's a big step forward for us. For Blaster specifically, we have this kind of progression system where you unlock different parts of the gun in the armory. So we have different bullet types, clips, barrels, gun bodies, shields. There's probably one other variable I'm forgetting, but you unlock those kind of over time as you go through the different levels. So you'll eventually get to this point where you can't get through level 2 because it's too challenging, but you had just unlocked some other weapon parts, and then you go back, you can mess around and say, okay, this is more my play style. I think I could get through, the mini boss or whatever, kind of halfway through the level if I have this different kind of gun build, and just dodge a little bit more or use the shield a little bit more. So that's where we try to add some variety into the game and make it really fun. On lockdown, I've been playing a lot of PS4, so I'm just finishing up Persona 5. Played Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a lot of these great games, but they have so many different weapons and equipment and stuff that you unlock. And on VR we can't have unlimited budgets, but as much as we could kind of add in there for some variety in the equipment, I think that helps with the longevity of the game.
It does help, Michael. And then also another thing you mentioned, which you didn't say it this way, but one thing that's important about gaming, I think in general, is that you feel that sense of accomplishment. And so when you have those different unlocks at different levels, or when you make achievements and you can keep going forward, we do have the situation right now where people are alone or quarantined or whatever. And, many people aren't going to work. They don't have their normal social settings. But beyond that, even if that weren't the case, people like to be rewarded for good work. And whether that's in their job or in their personal life or whatever, you like that. Yeah, nice work. And so I think that's what you achieve by providing either higher levels or unlocks or rewards or recognition on the sites and things like that. We're going to talk about that in just a minute as far as building the community, because that goes into that. But first I wanted to let Chris answer that question that we were just talking about.
So how do we make our games fun and attractive, I guess, is we're a small team and we make games primarily for ourselves. Space Pirate Trainer was and is a game that we wanted to play. And we love playing it. And so we just kept on fine-tuning the core gameplay loop to something that we absolutely loved and stand by. And so I guess that's our approach to addictiveness in games. Can we continue to play it? If we play it enough, we'll want to release it. Otherwise, it stays in our little barrel of games that sits away waiting for the day that they're fun enough.
That's great. Well, I'm going to take the next question back to you. I really like the way on your website, for example, on Space Pirate Trainer website, you have the leaderboards and stuff. I think that, again, people like that sense of accomplishment and people like recognition for their accomplishments.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of leaderboards in a lot of games just because I think in communities it can create some toxicity. But I love leaderboards for single player games and things where you can go, like Beat Saber, or different things where you can, and of course they have multiplayer too, but I'm just saying I like leaderboards where you can go in and see where you compare to your friends, because then you can work real hard and you can achieve that. And then it's even better when Oculus or Steam or whatever makes an announcement that tells your friends you actually surpassed them, which is just wonderful. So talk about how you use that as kind of a tool to help bring your community together, and what other things you might be doing to build engagement within your players.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Getting a prompt on your phone saying that your friend just beat your high score at $100 bills is always an annoying but welcomed notification. Because I always want to have a good high score, but it's always beaten by everybody else because they have more time with that game. But Space Pirate Trainer in particular, like we did a lot of focus on leaderboards early on, and the community really came to that. It turned this single player experience that a lot of people were having very much isolated in virtual reality into a communal playpen where people were fighting for the chance of being number one on the leaderboards. And we've really enjoyed just the occasional moment where we've reset the leaderboards, and we've only done it on major releases. But just watching people clamor for the number one position again has been amazing. And I think it was 2018 with Val, with Ryan and co, who I think you were even involved in that one. There was a tournament in 2018 where an exploit was found during the tournament, and the high scores went from pretty intense to crazy. And just watching that all happen live with the community was so much fun. We can't imagine Space Pirate Trainer without the community behind it and them just dominating the leaderboards.
Thanks, that's great.
I've really enjoyed watching, for example, Shen from HGC, who has been a big part of one of the reasons why I love HGC. He would just get really excited every time we're just about to do a push with a public build so that he could get number one on leaderboards for a couple of days. Those were the good days of VR. I really enjoyed them.
I want to pop in real quick and say to your comment about $100 bills, it's so funny because I have 5 kids. They're older. And one of my sons plays Beat Saber. And I have to admit here publicly, he plays on my account. And he is way better at the game than I am. So this week he beat somebody's high score, all my friends, like all their high score in Expert Plus mode. Right. And my friends were all going crazy. And I'm just like, I'm so not going to post that out there. I'm just going to let them think that was me. High scores and leaderboards are great, especially when you start getting older. It's just like, let them think what they want. But so Tommy and Michael, I'm interested now. I'm not as familiar as far as the leaderboards or that sort of thing with you two, but I'd like for you to talk about that, because community building is absolutely essential in any game, I think, especially VR games. We have the presence in the game, but or in VR rather, but it's important to build those communities. So what are you guys doing on that side, and do you have any more plans to do any things about that, or talk about that a little bit?
You could go first.
I think those are all great features that doesn't typically come first for us. We typically focus a lot on the core first. Lately, we've been building a lot of multiplayer where you're in the game at the same time which is like an even more powerful way of staying together. That's been something that's been very hard in VR, obviously, because the community's been so small. So in that sense, leaderboards are more efficient because people are not in there at the same time. It can be very hard to match up with somebody. But hopefully we're now seeing the growth on a scale where we'll have enough people in there. And I agree with the fact that it is really fun, and it should be a part of most fantastic games. So.
Yeah, for us, as we started taking Blast of the Universe to the arcades, we were actually the very first virtual athletics league tournament among, I think, 10 VR arcades. So that was kind of our big kind of community building push as we were taking the game to the market. Where we thought it was a great idea to have multiple arcades all competing for different high scores and for a cash prize together, and we thought it was really great what Ryan and Joe were doing over here. So. That's probably why I was invited to this panel. We thought that tournament was great. We got a couple more arcades to sign up just so they could join the tournament. So that was really cool, and we'd love to do another one in the future. So.
Well, that brings me back to the question you mentioned earlier when I was talking about arcade style games, but you mentioned LBs and actual arcades, physical location arcades. And all of you have games that are fantastic for location-based entertainment. I mean, they're just perfect. So I almost hated to bring it up, but, go ahead and talk about it. What are we going to do post-COVID to help rejuvenate? Yeah, Chris is laughing. Chris, it's not even funny. One day we will have a world post-COVID. He's like, oh my gosh, it's never going to end.
No.
Let's just presume here we're going to be very positive today, and eventually we will all be able to leave our homes and go see other human beings. And VR is great. Right now we can do it, in VR, which is fantastic. But let's just presume that everything's going back to normal.
Well, the things are coming back, right?
They seriously are.
There are arcades in Europe that are open. There are arcades all through UK that are open, and I imagine through the US they're progressively opening up. Potentially prematurely, but in most cases, like in Belgium at least, it's quite safe to go to LBE spaces. There is enough resources out there to make sure that headsets are sanitized. So there's very little damage or chance of infection in most cases, even if it's not crazy outside like it could be in some parts of the world. So yeah, I do believe that there will be a post-COVID. It's just that it's hard to believe that at this in the eye of the storm that it's coming. But it definitely will be a moment in the future where we look back and think, wow, what a weird year that was.
Well, and my comments actually were more directed toward, I definitely know that we can have those safe situations. We have ways to clean the headsets and all that. My question is more of the emotional impact to people who either run arcades or had to close arcades, or how we're going to get that mentality back. So I'm not so much concerned about the physical, because I agree with you. I mean, things are coming back, and if people are careful and cautious, that's honestly at this point for arcades, as far as I'm concerned, I think that's the easier thing to deal with. I think what was the harder aspect is the mental aspect and the attitude of what are we going to do to get that? And we don't have to go into that too in depth. I was just kind of wondering your thoughts on that, Michael, since you had mentioned LBs.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say like, the 168 plus arcade tournament, right, that Val threw for Beat Saber was, a nice, huge unifying moment. And I'm pretty sure Space Pirate Trader had a huge tournament after that one too, as well. That was, successful. So I think, if anything, as content creators, the thing that we can do is to try to have compelling content that would help the arcade owners get people into the VR arcades. So I think that's the main thing we can do. And kind of during COVID, I think there are a lot of people with this kind of pent up desire for social experiences. And my heart goes out to all the teenagers who missed prom last year and are going to, maybe take a gap year this year instead of going to college. I'd say, this would be the year to take a gap year. For kind of all those people, I think there's lots of, there will be a desire for shared social experiences, and VR could be one of those safe options for them. And I just think that if either we have compelling multiplayer content or just compelling content in general. I think Tommy, your cooking game would be great for people who have played too much Overcooked at home on their Switch and want something else. I think if we provide the content, hopefully that just helps the arcades kind of get back and running. That's one of the main things we could do.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Tommy, so that makes me think of a question specifically for you. How do you entice people to play a game to do something that maybe they don't want to do in physical reality?
Like cooking, or?
Yes. Because I'll tell you, I know it's way more fun in VR. I'm telling you, because I can burn every single thing I cook and the fire alarms never go off. But I'm just saying, I would think that would be a challenge. So I'm interested to know, like, when you develop things like that, what is your, gosh, wow, how do you do such a great thing for something that seems so mundane? Like, I think you should make next a hoarder's game or something. Just make people clean their house. So anyway, talk about that.
We had a lot of discussions about it. I think mainly because we have already seen quite a few examples of people using the cooking scenario as a basis for ground, like a back setting. But me and one of the producer, Gustav, who also made the fishing game Bait, we had been talking about this since, I think it's almost 15 years that we wanted to do a cooking game. He was a chef before. So he has actually worked in the kitchen in this very Celtic thing. And like a big passion of ours is to make games that, families can enjoy together. And I think cooking is one of those things that everybody can relate to it. Not necessarily everybody loves cooking, but food is something very social that we gather around, right? So that, and add a lot of humor into it, just like Overcooked, such a fantastic party game, and I love working with humor in the game, right? With this game, with the Cookout, we've been working with almost 2 years with it, so it's so much more fun to work with when it allows for a lot of jokes and small features and things like this. And I think the setting, we tried to make the setting very compelling. It doesn't feel like a kitchen, and it's not a realistic thing at all. The only I think part of it, like, you really have to collaborate, and kind of one person takes the role of shouting out orders and telling them, oh, we need onion on number 4. Come on, quickly now, it's going away. Which turns it into a really fun experience.
Yeah.
And I would just add that Job Simulator, did this really well, and obviously, that's been a very successful game. I was trying to get my wife into VR and show her what I was doing, and the cooking, the one when you're in the kitchen and the refrigerator transforms, and you turn the blender into a toaster into something else. So she loved that, and I think she may have done like maybe 20 scenarios in a row before we had to kind of like tap her on the shoulder and say, hey, you actually been playing for a long time. Like, don't you want to go get lunch? But I'm just so glad that I was able to find something in VR that was like very compelling for her. Kind of she's more of a non-gamer, but that's always great when you find that.
And that's a point that I would like to make. I really like when you introduce something new, kind of through something very familiar. So if you have VR that's very new and kind of you really put it on your face. So for somebody who's a non-gamer, it's quite nice to actually know, okay, this is bread, this is lettuce, this is tomato, and there's a lot of things that how you expect how it works, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure you guys are familiar with Horizon. Facebook Horizon will be coming out, and it's in beta right now. But there's a room in there called Mess Hall, and I think you're supposed to go in there with your friends and like actually be at the tables and stuff. But you can move everything, the cups and their little snacks and stuff, pastries. And I love going in there and just making the biggest mess. Like, I take everything in that whole room and just throw it everywhere. I put it on the tables and knock it off. I put it on the chairs and throw them across the room. And so I think with things like Cookout or you mentioned Job Simulator and games like that. They really are so much fun for just the average person because you see the dynamics of virtual reality. It's not so much about are you being the best player here, but you can do things in VR that we can't do in physical reality. And so it's really fantastic that we have games like that, and you're creating games like that allow you to do that. And so that brings me to a thought as far as the Space Pirate Trainer and Blasters as well. But how do you create experiences where the person feels like what they're doing is possible, but yet we wouldn't be able to do those things in reality? And is that important? Is that important for you to do that in your development?
So yeah, Space Pirate Trainer is quite different to Job Simulator.
Of course.
But in saying so, like Job Simulator, a lot of the interaction points also are not believable or realistic or imaginable. It's like some of the funnest moments of Job Simulator are when things happen that you do not expect. Like when you throw in objects into a blender and out comes a can of food. Like it's just some of the moments of absurdity in that game are just ones that are most memorable. So Space Pirate Trainer, when it comes to interactions with things you normally wouldn't do. I mean, most of my days, I don't actually go onto a platform and blast lasers at flying robots. But the explanation for how to do that or what to do to players is so simple. There is a flying object and you have a blaster in your hand. Most players connect with that and blast the flying thing. So the disconnect between reality and virtual realities is bridged pretty quickly for most players. I guess. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It kind of does. Yeah. And I wasn't comparing your game to something like Job Simulator, but I do think that it's cool where you have games like Cookout and like Job Simulator where you can have something that should be real, but we can do way more with it in VR and, just do different things. But then you also have games like you touched on this with first person shooters, for example, or arcade style shooters that we naturally know what to do with a weapon, a gun, a sword, or a gun, stuff like that. And so you're taking something that is based in reality. We have that concept there. And then you're putting them in an environment that you would not be able to do in physical reality, but you naturally know what to do with it. So you're adding in all that extra. It's fantastic. It's great when you guys come up with all these different ideas for the games and stuff.
Just to compliment Space Pirate Trainer for a second. I've always, want to be Boba Fett, since watching Star Wars. So just coming out with 2 automatic pistols and blasting these things. And the grappling hook is so cool too. That is, to me, one of the easiest games to get into, and a real kind of one-to-one between what you do, how it feels. Like, it's just great. And of course I want to see a sword game work really well in VR, but just kind of the weight of the controllers and things like that, and kind of free locomotion and the people running up to you just doesn't get all the way there quite yet. I've done. I don't know if you guys played, Nightfall. I think it was that Jeremy Renner show. It was a Starbreeze project, but they have like a weighted shield and a weighted sword on the controllers. So I did that demo, and that felt really, really cool to be kind of like a Night Crusader and actually have the controllers feel like, you're doing these battles. So
Michael, we had a panel yesterday on swords. We had all, I think it was 4 or 5 developers that had made swords games for VR. It was a great panel, and I've played all those games except for one. And I love all of them. They actually do give that sensation of realistic sword play. And I've done, I did Taekwondo for quite a while and stuff. And so, you develop a sense of what things should feel like and shouldn't. And those are the best swords games in VR. So I'd recommend you check out that panel from yesterday if you have a chance. I think Tommy's just dying to say something here. Say that, and I have another question I already have ready because we're going to run out of time, and I want to ask this last question.
I'll try to be super quick. I just want to say that's the great thing about guns is that people instinctively know what they are. So with the game that we're launching very soon, Blaston, we actually tried for a really long time to not make that game about guns. So we tried to replace it with other things, but we couldn't come up with anything. So we kind of backtracked. Mike Booth, who we work with, who's a fantastic game designer, said, if it feels like gun, it should probably be a gun. And we said, okay, yeah, let's just make it about guns, which is something our studio typically wouldn't do normally.
Yeah,
But,
that's a good point, and I encourage people listening to this. It's a perfect point. We talked about this yesterday in the swords panel. When you have a sword put in your hand, you naturally know what to do with it. I mean, you're supposed to slice something. Beat Saber, it's part of the reason it's so popular. People know that you're supposed to, slash, and so same thing with the gun, to shoot. But I would encourage people to also be thinking of other things they can do that aren't exactly like real sports. You guys are probably familiar with Echo Arena, and that's the game I'm most well known for playing. And it's a disc, and you automatically know you're supposed to grab it and throw it. You may not know the dynamics of the game right off the bat, but you understand that basic concept. I think if we have a gun, a sword, or whatever, but the reason it's good to be developing games that don't involve guns, it's not quite as bad for swords, but is because just trying to get into schools, like high schools, and develop those for the Olympics, for example. They won't allow guns in the Olympics, no first-person shooters. So anything you guys can do to keep trying to push it toward other objects. But I understand your challenge there, Tommy. Like, it's so easy just to turn it into something we're already familiar with. So, that gives you guys a challenge there. I'm giving you all the developers out there a challenge. Think of other things you can do that don't involve guns, because then it'll be a lot easier for us to push VR esports into places like the Olympics and high schools. My last question involved, actually, I want to start this with Michael, but I really like the voice in your game, the man who's speaking.
Oh,
So, yeah, I'd like to know about him, who that is, and did you choose him because of his voice, or was he a worker for you guys and then you had him do the voice or whatever? And then going into that, we have a few more minutes, I'd like to know what the other guys do as well, as far as using sound, whether that be voice or music or whatever, to enhance the experience of your game, because it is important in VR games because we're totally immersed in that. So I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
I was not one of the game designers, so I don't have the complete story of this, but I do know who Alwyn is, and he was one of the original 3 co-founders of Secret Location, our creative director. So at the time, we kind of had one original founder, one of the co-founders was more head of content, and one of the co-founders was head of product. So Pietro Gagliano, shout out to Pete, and he voiced Alwyn, and was one of kind of the creative visionaries, working with Josh Manricks, Michael Sandercock, and the other game designers and team at Secret Location to build this. So just the whole team has such a great sense of humor in the Toronto office. So,
that's great. Tell him I love his voice. I love it. It's great. Okay. All right, you two, we have just about 3 more minutes. So Chris and Tommy, can you guys talk about sound or audio in your games real quick? Or, what you do?
Sure. Sound was very important in the entire development process of Space Pirate Trainer. The audio, the music itself, just the high intensity music that we've got. It's a great soundtrack from James Marvel, a Belgian DJ. And then just putting in as many awesome kick-ass sound effects as we could. Most of that came from Dirk Van Welden again, who spent ages just finding the right sound for a blaster. Or the sound effects for the Volton as it zaps around droids. So getting that sort of feeling of believability and fantastic was really important. Something that when you fired off the laser, you went, yep, that's a laser, but it also overwhelmed you. That was the sort of sound effect that we went for. So finding that sort of feeling that was real, like you could feel that this sound, it just came out of your hand. You did that, but also that it shocked you. That was what we're going for every sound.
I love that. See, and it's so great. Like with VR development, you guys do such a good job because you put so much thought into those kind of things. And then when we users play those games, you can be like, wow, yeah, this is like perfect. So, because if it isn't, because people tell you and they complain and say this is bad. So, but that's great. I love that you put so much thought into it. So Tommy, how do you do that with a cooking game?
So I just want to say, I think the 6th person who joined was a full-time musician and sound effect guy, who's really one of our first guys in. Now we have 2 people full-time on sound and music, and we still have people coming out helping. And we use voice acting, and the ambition level is quite high. I do think it's really important. It's like you have 5 senses, and then you sound and visuals are the most the things where we are furthest along in simulating your reality.
That's great. I love it. Well, thank you guys for answering that question, for answering all the questions, and for the great discussion today. It was great to have you guys on the panel, and I wish you luck with your current projects and future projects. Of course, stay in touch with Virtual Athletics League, and we'll try to do some more tournaments and things like that. It's always fun. It's a great way to bring the communities together and keep our VR ecosystem kind of, you know, just everybody focused on the goal of creating great experiences. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.